Hello, everyone, dear friends and heroes of this beautiful community that forms the members and friends of the Committee on Spirituality, Values, and Global Concerns, New York. I see so many faces already connecting, and people keep arriving, and I'm meeting them as we speak. I just wanted to start this important meeting that we're having today by especially welcoming our special guest speaker, Dr. Alfredo, who is already connected with us, I believe from Chile, if I'm not mistaken. And in just a moment, we will have a chance to understand that important approach that is bringing to all of us for a collective reflection regarding this important light we need to see shed in a way, in the path for a global governance that sustains peace, sustainability, and dignity. And we are living in a moment of great disruption, especially in the geopolitical world and moment that we are all witnessing. And as a group of NGO members associated with the United Nations, it is very important that we all stand up and share the best views, best practices, and our contribution in order to strengthen this important international mechanism that is the United Nations, that require our union, require our collaboration in a constructive way to fulfill its overall mission. It's my honor now to introduce our guest speaker, which is more than special today, Dr. Alfredo Sfeir-Younis, also known by his spiritual name, Dan Zamblin Cho Tab Ken, World Healer. Please correct me if I'm not pronouncing it perfectly. Dr. Sfeir-Younis brings a truly rare integration of experience. Nearly 3 decades at the World Bank, including service as a special representative to the United Nations, a lifelong commitment to environmental economics and sustainability, deep engagement in global diplomacy, and an equally profound spiritual path as a Mayan priest and student of His Holiness Lama Gönchen Tulku Rinpoche. In today's presentation, which is titled How to Govern Our Material and Spiritual Tomorrow, the Emerging Charter of the UN, Dr. Sfeir-Younis will challenge us to reconsider the very foundations of global governance. He will argue that the state of the world calls for nothing less than a renewed UN Charter, one grounded in both material responsibility and spiritual leadership, and that the selection of the next UN Secretary General must reflect this transformation rather than perpetuate business as usual. He will also highlight the critical role of civil society, which is all of us here, basically, most of us, I would say, and also the particular role of the NGO Committee on Spirituality, Values, and Global Concerns in shaping this emergent vision. So we are very grateful for your presence with us today, Dr. Alfredo. Thank you so much for being with us and dedicating your very busy time to give us this wonderful presentation to start off this new year in the right path. Thank you so much, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this invitation. I am so happy to be here to see so many friends, so many old friends, so many places, so many battles, so many discussions, so many new ideas. I'm very happy. I'm very, very happy. I like to say that if I think about 2026 and my challenges in servicing humanity, I face 2 of them that are important to share today. One is to create a new path of planetary prosperity. And the second one is the establishment of a collective form of governance to construct this humanity's material and spiritual tomorrow. This is not a trivial proposition, naturally. And I would like to say that during the era of free trade and globalization, we had a tremendous economic optimism. But it was an optimism accompanied by a social pessimism because of equity, because of disparities. When the geoeconomics and geopolitics we witness today, and the strong tendency towards multipolarity without multilateralism, we leave a situation of serious economic and social pessimism. Just look at what is happening in Davos. In the meantime, because of that, what is happening is this emphasis on transactions and economics and this social vision of the planet today, we are, if not stopping, but displacing really a serious attempt to deal with the local and the global environmental challenges. There is a clear disregard for the proper governance of the global public goods. There is a disregard for our future generations and the rights to nation. One increased complexity of all of this is that the solution to our problems demand collective action. In my view, we are experiencing a form of World War III, a silent war on human and spiritual values accompanied by a constant process of dehumanization. Even our intrinsic value of being a human being is deeply questioned today. I hope that artificial intelligence will not diminish the true essence and power of our individual and collective discernment. It looks like we are playing the game of Monopoly, a winner-takes-all scenario. There must be a new form of dialogue that is now missing. There must be a new form of trust that is now missing. With the right Secretary General, I am convinced that only the United Nations can deliver. It is not all about politics. The circumstances require a tremendous knowledge of economics, sustainable development, governance, and social restructuring. In this respect, the UN Charter is one of the pillars for such dialogue and the recovery of this trust. A new Charter 2.0 or 3.0 should become a solid rock of multilateralism. The other pillar is collective consciousness. This new charter is part of a package of social and collective consciousness, what it needs to be the new mission of the UN, and how a new Secretary General will actually implement that. There are several fundamental political and strategic questions, obviously. One is, how committed are we to the future of multilateralism? This is not a trivial question. And the second one, and very transcendental, what are the spiritual foundations of multilateralism? Indeed, there are many spiritual foundations of multilateralism. Our human nature, inner power, sovereignty, mutuality, human values and decisions are deeply affecting the karmic path of millions and millions of people. In effect, the rights of all expressions of life, their influence, how do we reach agreements on our shared and common responsibility? I have been working, as you know, on these issues for at least 3 or 4 decades. My first statement at the UN in September of 1996, it was entitled "The Spiritual Foundation of Globalization." I raised the question of whether there is a spiritual role for the United Nations system, and this is many decades ago. I would say that some of the statements at that particular point might be worth remembering. The first one is that the Dumbarton Oaks Declaration of 1944, in the creation of the United Nations, explicitly stated humanity's need for both material and spiritual growth. This is important to remember, that we need a new global being. We still have not done so. And I think a major effort needs to be done in this area. Third, I said that a truly global society must go beyond pure economics, beyond pure economic relations. our relations are not only transactional as they are coming to be today in the planet. I said that the absence of a global consensus on planetary livelihood, in a sense, are bringing us to the survival of the fittest. We cannot escape the establishment of agreed global norms. This norm must be anchored in appropriate organizational arrangements. And finally, I recall part of my speech saying that global governance without spirituality is to make decisions without wisdom. This is fundamental for this committee, without wisdom. Today, we observe a strong tendency towards bilateralism or an extreme form of unilateralism. Just look at what is happening in Davos. This is a fundamental to any discussions about the future of the UN. Thus, if we decide to reimagine or redefine multilateralism as a group, how do we integrate both the spiritual and material dimensions of such multilateralism? As a correlate to this series there are a series of other questions. How committed should a UN Secretary General be to human and spiritual values or to multilateralism? How engaged should that person be in the inner transformation of humanity? Not only the material transformation. How to make the above a reality. Remember that the greatest power of the UN is the power of moral suasion. I have studied the Charter of the UN very much in detail, and I agree that this was a good charter for the UN after World War I and World War II. Today, the world has changed, and we need a new charter for the UN. One of the key issues for this charter, just to leave some in this short period of presentation, some ideas about this, is what are we going to do with the citizens of the world and the new charter of the UN? To propose a new charter does not mean it will be easy to implement. This reminds me of the time of the 60th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights when I asked at the UNESCO meeting that we should rewrite this declaration, this Universal Declaration, and I was told by a former minister of Holland that there is no political will, there is no power to rewrite it, so it was better to have a bad Universal Declaration than ask for a rewritten of the Universal Declaration. This might become a very big issue in the nearest future. I have seen very, very powerful minister of developed countries just 3 days ago saying, I really do not care what the UN says. I don't really care what the UN does. This is very, very taking, very, very hard to even listen, you know? So essentially, the selection of a UN, the writing of the charter cannot be business as usual. This is not 2026, is not for business as usual. You know, we need really an agency, and that was expressed by Diane in her meditation, an agency and a Secretary General who shall move the planetary will of wisdom and ethics that should plant new seeds within the United Nations. A spiritual leadership is fundamental in the next step of this committee and the UN. We must focus explicitly on the connectedness between writing a new charter, a new Secretary General, and a new UN for the world. If we look at the charter of this committee, you know, we say that it's spirituality, values, and global concerns. This must be part of the new charter of the United Nations. And I say because we live in a planetary society, because we live in the era of citizenry, because we are moving to market, to right, and social restructuring, because we are not only facing technological constraint, but biological constraint, but because we lack of global consensus on social ethics, because there is a gap in social doctrine to support humanity's material and spiritual transformation. We are governed by 3 systems of law today: the human law, the spiritual law, and natural law. And the 3 of them are very powerful, and this committee needs to say something. And when we rewrite the charter, if this is possible, these are very fundamental, elements of it. Today, there is a tremendous fear to govern our global public goods, climate, oceans, biodiversity, values, security. And we should add that we need to really have, as part of the Charter, the rights of nature and the right of future generation. These are not a slogan. These require a very careful understanding, practice, and self-realization. We need to protect creation and the fruits of the common global public goods needs to be shared equitably. This must be central to the mandate of the UN, and the UN is the only one that really can do it. We need to be committed to global justice. We need to ensure that societies become materially rich and spiritually rich at the same time. This cannot be phrases outside the domain of the Charter. It should be the main body of the Charter. And in addition to the Charter, we should be able to write a manifesto that a new Secretary General should really convey and comply with. A citizen manifesto. This is possible to be done. It's possible to be written, and it's possible to be proposed. I would say certainly that any change in the Charter will require changes in the organigram and the organization of the United Nations. And I have said for the last 3 or 4 years that the Trusteeship Council of the UN should become the Citizens' Council of the UN. Whether they have vote, whether they don't have vote, whether they only have, voice, and how this is going to be a structure, I have no time to really share it with you. I have actually done a new type of charter, but in 10 minutes, it's not possible to really give justice to that. Let me end my presentation by saying that the next Secretary General has to be selected with very specific criteria and needs to be transparent how this process is going to be done if we really want a new charter, if we really want a new UN. I say if we continue with the past, like, okay, a little marginal move here, a little marginal move there, whatever we aspire in our meditation for 2026 might not actually be attained. The new Secretary General with this charter, must be the moral compass of the planet, must be the foundation of a new social ethics. It must embody a new planetary vision. It has to be a bedrock of an equitable and compassionate planet. We cannot delink this process from social justice, on the foundation of rights. We have, and we must have, the power of persuasion. We must have the power of transformation, and we must have the power of a spiritual change in our planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Alfredo, for such a concrete presentation in terms of all the steps that would be required to move forward this spiritual agenda into the process that we are all watching. Sometimes it's a little scary to see how actually the world leaders can easily detach themselves from commitments that we thought would be already a permanent advancement, but we cannot take anything for granted, and the spiritual values that helped form the UN 80 years ago must be re-energized within this new push that you are proposing with so many concrete proposals today. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. And we are now moving to a second portion of your presentation where we are going to be opening now the microphones for interactions with our dear participants today. And if you want to participate by putting your question in the chat box, you can do so, or you can raise your hand and you can ask Dr. Alfredo directly your question. I see my dear friend Richard Jordan raise his hand. Okay, Richard, so you are the first question.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to see friends of longstanding going back to World Bank and so many other places in the corridors. Alfredo, my question deals with the fact that the UN, whether we like it or not, is being dismantled step by step. Yesterday it was announced, or was it Monday, Tuesday, that UNDP is moving 400 posts to Spain and Bonn. Now, whether those posts are all filled, but we're being led, whether we like it or not, into this creation of a new charter, a new UN, and I just wonder if you could comment on these developments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard. So nice to see you. I remember when we met the first time at the UN, when we had so many luncheons, so many meditations, and I'm happy you are doing well and you look very well. So, my abrazo from Chile. I like to say that I am very, very disappointed about the dismantling of the United Nations without an alternative vision. It's not fair, it's not acceptable to me. I think if we're going to dismantle, we need to agree why we are dismantling and what is the alternative to multilateralism. This is the essence. You know, to me as a Buddhist practitioner, this is like loving the other. You know, multilateralism is for the small country. Multilateralism is for the decent power. Multilateralism is not for the high power, you know? So when you give unconditional love, when you give compassion, when you give caring, sharing, and you are deeply involved in your spiritual path to change humanity, when you belong to a committee on spirituality, human values, and global concerns, we are talking about multilateralism. It is impossible to practice love without the other. It is impossible to practice international diplomacy without the other. And I'm not talking about, you know, a small group of privileged actors in the system. I'm talking about what's happening with what they do versus what the rest needs to absorb. I am completely committed to a multilateral system, not only because I think it's the only way to have collective consciousness in place, not just individual consciousness, but collective consciousness in place, but also have the capacity to love, have the capacity to share, have the capacity, you know, to take the other and bring it to a level of decent welfare, spiritual and material welfare. So the dismantling of the UN, the destruction of the UN is simply a crisis in value, it's a crisis in consciousness that I feel responsible, even with a grain of salt of responsibility. We cannot abandon this responsibility. So we should be the voice of a new UN, rather than going with the flow and trying to say, okay, I am an spectator of dismantling the UN. This is not acceptable. We should write it. We should speak it up. We should be on the microphone that we, you know, own, citizens of the world. You know, we are citizens of the world, and we're in the era of citizens. And so there is like a planetary democracy that is coming up, you know, and we need to bring this planetary democracy with values, with a spirituality, but please, not only as a slogan, but as a commitment, you know, and you know what I've been doing for many years. I know what you have been doing, Richard, for many years, and we need to do it, but we need to rethink it. 2026 will be very different from the past, because the system is not only in transition, the system is in deep crisis.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Richard, for bringing up that question. I think Nina raised her hand, and then Levi Bautista will come next. Nina, you first.
Hi, Alfredo. Just out loud with since 9/11, I had a very strong feeling that decisions were made outside the UN, and that they were ambassadors, had jobs, that they represented their countries, they came to the table, and they just
Nina, my dear, your connection seems to be cutting out very much. May I ask you if you could please type in your question in the chat box instead so we can understand?
No,
Could you please?
that's too much. It's too much. Okay? I don't know why you don't hear me. Do you hear me? Alfredo? No?
I can hear you, but it's cut off, but I will put my ear on the computer to hear you fully, but please speak in a way that it doesn't cut off.
Yeah, it might be, I don't know why, storms. I just wanted to say that the UN is not functioning as a whole, yeah? Since 9/11, when all the presidents met outside the UN to make decisions about what to do. And I think the whole world is in crisis. So what I mean, to redesign the UN now doesn't make sense because the world is redesigning itself. And I loved your word, planetary democracy. Yes, very important. But the people are speaking now. The voice of people are emerging. So the UN will have to change from representing individual countries to being a collective. Yeah. And maybe it's not the time yet. It will be the time. So we can begin to work towards that and really see a collective. But the way it is now, you'd just be fixing holes in a broken system because all systems are going down. Yeah, that I'm finished.
I think it was a little better now, the connection, Nina. Thank you so much. Alfredo?
Nina,
Yeah,
love to see you.
thank you.
So long. I heard the question perfectly well.
Thank you.
So thank you for the question. I would say that from my personal perspective, with the age that I have now and the time left, I think we all should pitch in to change it. Don't wait anymore. I don't have time to wait. And if I fail, it's okay. It's part of the game. Second, I fully agree with you, and I have written a paper on this, that the UN is not about nations, it's about people and nature. So the UN needs to change its name to start with. And in rewriting or writing a 2.0, 3.0 charter, it forced me to really address this particular question. Is it worth it or is it not worth it? And the only way to answer the question whether it is worth it or not, it depends on how you see the alternative scenario. And I don't want to see what I see as the alternative scenario, which is unilateralism, which is really a transactional UN. You know, I believe that we have the responsibility as a generation, maybe senior citizens, whatever you want to call it, to leave humanity with a blueprint of what the UN should be. And I think we as a generation of the Second World War, and the generation of globalization, the generation of development and social reconstruction, we have an experience and a wisdom that the new generation do not have not been exposed to. And I think it's my responsibility, not for you or me, it's for my grandchildren. I have 7 grandchildren, and I don't want them to put in my cemetery piece, you know, here is the great guy. No, I want them to put there a phrase that says, he went for it. He didn't stop. That's all I want them to say. And I go around the world lecturing, speaking in retreats, spiritual retreats, informal conference, you know, talking about all the subject matters that the UN requires to change. We have to have the courage to do it. We fail, future generations will say, yes, this generation was not good enough. You know, they failed or they were dreamers. Some people tell me you are a dreamer. I'm happy to be a dreamer. I'm happy at 78 to dream. You know, I am sad of a world that doesn't even have the capacity to dream. let's not allow the United Nations to collapse because we didn't say anything, that we became, witnesses, silent witnesses of this. I don't want to be part of that generation. I want to be a part of the generation that with love and compassion gave it all, gave all its knowledge, gave all its experience. And we also need to show that we have an understanding of what's happening. Because many people look at us as older people like saying, no, this guy just, they come from another planet, No. Governance without wisdom is the path to disaster. We are beginning to have a little bit of wisdom, and we need to share it.
Beautiful said. I just wanted to mention a few comments from the chat box before we go to Levy question. Richard mentioned perhaps bioregionalism. Maury Hayes said, I hear in what Prime Minister Mark Carney said at Davos, echoes of a similar vision. Johnny Carney said, not fixing, transforming. And Richard also said that he has a quotation for his gravestone too. Okay, Levy, I think it's your turn now. The floor is yours.
Danilo and the CSVGC, thank you for opening the year with this timely presentation, and what a timely presentation it is for our dear Alfredo. It's been quite a while, Alfredo, since we saw each other. I'm sure the good waves out there have never been far from. We've never been far from each other, even as distance and time we were indeed. So thank you very much for the wisdom you bring, as always, to this conversation. Yours is from a Christian perspective. I don't apologize for referring to that. Yours is a public faith and a social witness, and that I recall from your conversation what Cornel West, African American philosopher and social activist, who said, "Justice is what love looks like in the public square." We rarely speak of love in international affairs. We will be outliers in the main group, so to speak, of international affairs if we spoke about love. But that, I think, is at the core of not only the committee's mandate, but at the core of what you said, multilateralism that is replete with wisdom and not gutted out of it. So thank you again for that reminder. I'm struck always at propositions for the rewriting of the UN Charter, and from your presentation, I realize that both the positive and the negative arguments for revisiting the UN Charter have ethical dimensions. Arguments for rewriting would say the Charter is outdated for the current crisis that we're facing. The Security Council is unrepresentative and paralyzed. So the reform of the UN could rebuild trust in multilateralism. And the ethical dimensions of human security, intergenerational justice, the duty to prevent harm, accountability, sovereign equality. Wow, talk about sovereign equality and the assertion of unilateral force and all of that. And then the arguments against rewriting, political impossibility, the P5 veto power, the risk of destabilizing the global order, especially because of the rise of authoritarian governments who will have part in that rewriting. We may just go back and unwind. Well, we haven't rewritten the Charter, but we are already breaking apart the rules-based order post-1945. So I think your presentation today is very instructive in what I think, Danilo, is the proper work of this committee, to raise the ethical dimensions both on the pro and the for and the against, and see how we can inscribe even more boldly and courageously the love aspect, which is the compassion aspect, the equity aspect. Mold the context of love around language that diplomats understand without diluting it.
I miss you a lot. I have thought about you a lot when you invited me to Virginia, to your church, and speak up. I'm so happy you are okay. You look very, 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 very okay.
Oh, we don't hear you, Alfredo.
Yeah. Is your mic off? Yes.
I don't know if you heard me, but I miss you.
Yes.
Okay. I am saying that I will respond this question with no uncertain terms, even if it looks or feels like an impossible. And I will ask and propose how to make it possible. Okay? The first thing is it is absolutely unacceptable that humanity is led without ethics or a consensus on social ethics. I'm not saying that we need to agree on a blueprint of ethics. I think we should agree on what is the minimum, non-acceptable from there on, that we break that, that particular level. So let's agree on a minimum, not on a maximum. And this is the problem of the past, that we are trying to impose some blueprint. I don't see the Charter as an imposition of a blueprint. I see the Charter as a recollection of ourselves, saying the world has changed, and therefore, this and this and this needs to happen. How perfect, if we are going to be maximalist or minimalist, I do not know. The political system has a lot to say about that. The second thing is that we live in a huge gap of social doctrine. I just finished a book, it's in somewhere in the market, and there is a chapter about this, and me, you Christian, me as Buddhist, I don't want a political party to fill that gap. I think we need to raise to the occasion. And that's why we at our age have a little bit of authority to speak like this and say, this is what I have done, this is where I am, and this is where we need to go. The big risk today of the planet is that there is a huge vacuum in social doctrine. All the previous doctrines before World War I and World War II, and particularly after World War, even today, there is not even an economic doctrine that is acceptable. Even during globalization, there was a social doctrine. I was at the World Bank, all these things about free trade, whether it was good or not good, it is not the point of this meeting. But there was a doctrine. Today, there is no doctrine. And this is the danger that without an UN, we are taking today. There is no social doctrine available. And that book is about what I believe should be the social doctrine based on canonical writings of the direct teachings of the Buddha. But let me say how we can do it. And I will take myself at risk with no problem. I probably will publish in the social media my view of the Charter as a personal, engagement for 45 years. And I think we need to present it to people. I believe if people really absorb, what are the key essence of this new Charter, people can carry us, your people, everyone, because the social media today is capable to do many, many miracles that 50 years ago we couldn't do without the social media. The problem we have and the problem we face is that ingrained in human nature is competition, is, this is not good, this guy is not good, this Charter is not good, there are 20 things that are missing. Okay, I'll sign my personal humble opinion because I cannot keep silent. It's not that I want to do something in particular for myself. It's just that if you preach, as you do so well, if you stand in front of the microphone of your community, we need to know what we are going to tell that community. Today in Chile, people detest the United Nations. If you ask someone on the street, oh, no, you know, this Agenda 2030, you know, all these chameleons that are behind it, and the domination, this is part of the domination, and so on. We have let that to happen. I feel responsible in some ways, not in all ways, because my resources are very limited. I cannot travel more than 200 days a year because then I get totally exhausted. But I've been last year at least in 20 trips going around speaking about the future of the planet. And I think we need to be humble and we need to say, okay, we are going to take this path. We cannot have committees which in the end don't take any path because of political balance, because I cannot say this, I cannot say that, because, you know, the secondary identities begin to dominate the committee, you know, I cannot be this part, I have this nationality, this gender, this political party. Then the committee is fantastic to have us grow, but we need to make the planet grow. And I think that's a risk you stand every Sunday or every Saturday, I don't know which day you do your public statement, in which you tell them, this is my interpretation of the Bible. This is the part of the Bible you need to understand. We together need to tell the world, this is the United Nations we want. This is today united. Whether the world says, you know, go to hell, fine. I walk there, no problem. But I believe that's not going to be the case. I think the world is waiting for a new interpretation of the UN. The UN has been, you know, in its own way, being self-destructive by keeping quiet, but not taking a path and so on. Yesterday, the president of the United States in Davos said something that it was astonishing to me, that he sees a lot of benefit. He sees a lot of future for the UN. Because given what is happening in the planet, you know, I thought that maybe he would say, I take my cards home and I play in my own game. He didn't say that. That is very, very powerful in today's world. So my commitment is to finish, you know, some sort of a new statement about the UN. Whether that is good, bad, incomplete, well, obviously, we have to always have better and better possibilities, but to keep quiet while we see that the UN is crumbling is not my position. It's totally the contrary, you know, because I see the future of the UN, because I see the benefit of the UN. While my people here in Chile tell me, what the hell are you doing? That thing is worth nothing, you know, and tell you all the typical argument, oh, the Security Council, this and that. I'm not afraid of that. I'm not afraid of having that and transitioning, but we need excellent ideas for us to transition and for them to yield the space we need in spirituality, human values, and, you know, social concerns. If we don't have these new ideas, if we don't produce high quality products, they are not going to even listen to us. And what is happening from my own angle, is my own angle, it's a personal thing. I see a lot of mediocrity in the writings of the future of the UN. And this needs to change if the UN has a chance.
Thank you very much. Well, we do not have more time for interactions. It was a very dynamic participation. We have a few other comments in the chat box, and I invite everybody to go there and check them for themselves. I have very few minutes left. First, to say thank you, Alfredo, for this wonderful presentation. I think you provided a roadmap that would be very useful for all of us, because, as you well said, stay quiet is really not an option for anybody. And your presentation was a very dynamic and energized invitation for us to work together and collaborate The platform offered by the Committee on Spirituality, Values, and Global Concerns is to really open that engagement from different perspectives, different experiences, different point of views, so we can build together this path that is required. Because if we cannot bring about a consensus within such a smaller group, how can we ask for consensus in the world political chaos that we see in the world? We really need, as spiritually initiated individuals and organizations, we need to be the good example and the source for providing a important restructuring new vision for the work of the United Nations. That was well said by Alfredo here. So I wanted to ask you, Alfredo, because we have only a couple of minutes, if you wanted to say some final words, maybe how can we be connected with you? And of course, we want to join forces with you in many other actions throughout this year. And I want to express on behalf of everybody here our gratitude for such a energetic and enthusiastic presentation beginning the year 2026 for this committee.
I only want to say thank you. I feel so honored to have been invited again to the committee. I feel so happy to see all of you. All of you mean a lot to me. You know, each of you know exactly where we met, what we tried to do, and how important it is for our life, our spiritual path. I think we should not agree on a blueprint. We should agree on the unacceptable more than the acceptable. You know, if we agree at least on the unacceptable, you know, which is easier to agree, you know, then there is a possibility to move towards the acceptable while we self-realize the unacceptable and correct the unacceptable. The Buddha said that the right vision is to have a right vision, you must become the master of the wrong vision. And through correction of the wrong vision, you will arrive at the right vision. I think this principle is very relevant today, because if we keep putting blueprints, you know, it's not going to happen. And I tell you, many countries which now have the power, you know, they're looking for new ideas. They are desperately to have an alternative, so not to kill the UN. I tell you because I'm connected. What they don't want is to do it, but if nobody claims anything, it ends up, you know, going through the cracks of the system. So my call is for us to be together. My call is continue a conversation. I don't have the truth. I never will have it, but I can make a contribution after 40 years of study, you know, of the charter and making proposals that many of you have really listened, not once, but maybe more than once. So I am here available, you know, and I say, I will continue walking, and I want to see you physically one day, all of you, you know, and embrace you and really get closer independently of whether we agree or disagree, but that's not the issue. So bless to all, and I just finished with a mantra, Om Muni Muni, Maha Muni, Shakya Muni Soha, which means create, you know, a space, create inner space, create inner capacity, be the master of the creation of your own capacity. Soha, Shalom, Amen. Adiós. Gracias. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Alfredo. We are just doing a couple of things and having a moment of silence together before we close the meeting. If your agenda permits, I will be very honored with your presence for the next 5 minutes. So I wanted to invite our vice chair of this committee, our sister Sabita, because she would have to present a couple of invitations to all of us before we conclude today's meeting. Sister Sabita?
Hello, everyone. It's so nice to see so many of you today. And thank you from my side, Alfredo, for raising the bar for all of us. And I can see that as we move forward, whether in this committee or in our individual organizations, as we move forward this year in creating programs or planning programs or organizing programs, we have a lot more wider perspective to ponder on and to address. My part today is to just share with you all a little bit about some of the things that the committee focuses on. Last year, we spent a lot of energy in doing something during the HLPF and also the Spirit of the UN Award ceremony. We've also partnered with many groups and organizations to do events during CSVGC and CSW and the human rights, etc. And so for this year, we see ourselves doing something similar. So be very open for partnerships also. I see many of you here, Unitive Cluster and others, through which we can do more as Alfredo has encouraged us and inspired us. So the more the collective, the stronger is the force, as we all know, Levy and Diane with the Oneness program. So there is a lot coming up, and the Unitive Cluster has also arranged a very powerful and rich program happening next Tuesday. I think Joni had put the information in the chat, so please click on that link, and it will be great to have your input there. Of course,
it's not a registration link; it's the actual link. But we really hope you'll come, and it really is going to be a dynamic program that's about putting these principles in action.
Right. So it is actually what we've heard today and what we've all agreed with in the conversations today. So we want to address some of those in bigger and deeper ways, and of course we would love to encourage all of you, those of you who are not members yet of the committee, to please consider becoming a member. Because the bigger we are, the more powerful the force will be, and then our voice will also have that strength. So I would then ask Keiko, our treasurer, to just tell us how we could become a member. Keiko?
Hello? Yes?
Yes. Can you please share with all our friends how they could become a member of the committee?
Yes, we have an application form for 2026. So we'd like to send out by the email to everybody to be a member through the application form, and also member fee is $35 that you can pay through Ziri. It's payment at CSVGC-NY.org, or like the Czech NGO Committee on Spirituality, Values, and Global Concern, New York, and send to the address that I will put in the chat.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I'm trying to also place the link for the membership form, and it's very important because we are beginning the 2026 year that everybody renews their membership with the CSVGC and update us of your designated representative for each organization that is a member of this committee, so we can maintain that communication flowing where we are having new programs or activities or wonderful presentations like the one we watched today, so you can receive the information and be part of it. Thank you very much, Keiko and Sabita, for this beautiful announcements. And before I conclude, I'm going to call our dear member of this executive committee as well, Charles, who wants to also say something before I conclude. Dear Charles, please.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much for your comments. They really resonate. And I read actually Mark Carney's message at Davos this morning, and it's heartening to see that some of the leaders of the middle countries, okay, are getting engaged now, okay, and they're stepping up. And that's kind of the message for me, is that one of the things you identified is the UN needs to show leadership. It needs to show leadership, and it needs to be seen to be doing something. So my invitation is to all the people that are out there that feel that they have something to contribute or want to contribute, become participants with us. Be volunteers with our committee, and get more people engaged in talking about this, creating a groundswell of what are some of the ideas we might have in order to move the yardsticks forward. One of the things I am greatly concerned about in the dialogue today, and have been feeling, particularly what's happening within the UN that was mentioned before about dismantling some of the structures and reducing the budget, is by the time we get the hospital built, the patient will be dead. That's my concern, that analogy, okay? We want to do the right thing, but if we don't do it in an expedient period of time, we will be left with what we have, and that may not be very good. So please, I encourage all of our participants here and all our members to get out there, build membership, get involved, because if you don't get involved, then you can not complain of what you get. So that's my message to everybody. Again, I thank you, Doctor, for your words of wisdom. And I hope that you will share with us some of the steps you think that we could start to work on to start to create this awareness. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you very much for your participation. And we are coming to an end of today's general meeting. And as usual, we would like to invite everyone for a moment of silence, as it's much needed for the work that we all have to do together. And I think Alfredo's call today was for us all to join hands and really take concrete actions. And he provided us with very concrete ways where we can advance a lot in fulfilling the mission that unites us all together in this committee. The beauty of this committee is that we have so many brilliant minds that also can contribute for that spiritual revitalization of the United Nations as a whole system. And we all are part of the solution. We cannot just be watching and silently regretting all the things that are hurting us so much, especially in the recent political events. We need to speak up. We need to stand out, as Alfredo invited us all. And we need to be strong, because it's no easy task. It's something that requires from us preparation, intelligence, cooperation, and humbleness, because we are not the owners of the truth. We are just servants of the truth, and we can help with our contribution, even if it's a small one. If we think it's not making any difference, you are part of the solution when you come and join forces and work in collaboration. So this committee is a call to action for that engagement, for that collective action. So let's end this meeting by bringing that wisdom with our silence meditation, because when we have that power strengthened within us, then we are equipped with the force necessary to go ahead and make it happen, get these things done. So let's have our moment of silence. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Alfredo, once again. Have a blessed end of week, everybody, and have a much illuminated new year ahead of all of us. It was a really pleasure to see you, and I invite you to get connected in our February meeting, where we will be sharing the agenda and details very soon to all the participants of this meeting. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.